it's fixed.
Is Dottie feeling the same? Is Dottie feeling the same way?
Are we up?
Because that's who we have to
Okay.
fix it for.
Yeah.
Good evening. On behalf of my colleagues and central office staff, I'd like to welcome you to the Shrewsbury School Committee meeting of January 23rd, 2019. Our meeting tonight is being televised thanks to the work of Mr. John McDonald and the Shrewsbury Media Connection. This meeting will be rebroadcast on Channel 29 until our next regularly scheduled meeting on February 13th. It will also be available for viewing on SMC's website. The first item on our agenda is public participation. This is the first item on our agenda at each regularly scheduled meeting. Public participation provides an opportunity for members of the community to address the school committee. Tonight, no one has expressed interest in addressing the committee. Those wishing to do so in the future should contact the chairperson in advance of the meeting, and we will recognize you for up to 3 minutes. The next item on our agenda is chairpersons and members' reports. Colleagues, anything to report?
No.
Seeing none, the next item on our agenda is superintendent's report. Dr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Palich. One of the new activities that we have for students this year is the Mass Interscholastic Athletic Association has created an opportunity for so-called esports or electronic sports, which are essentially different video game sports. And there is a team from Shrewsbury High School, or multiple teams I understand, that have competed in this season. And one of those teams, at least one, perhaps more, will be competing at Gillette Stadium on Friday evening in the state final tournament in that esports. So Mr. Pizzillo communicated that to the community this past week. So we'll look forward on reporting how they do, and we'll see if they have an update on the Patriots game planning, which I'm sure will be going on at that time as well on Friday evening. Also want to remind folks that the Shrewsbury Education Foundation dinner is coming up this coming Saturday. Looking forward to honoring, I know I spoke to that specifically last time, but honoring Jim and Paula Bonamo in particular for the Community Service Award, as well as the John Collins Awards winners and the Impact Award winners, who are, to my right, Amy Clouder, the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Assistant Superintendent, Chris Girardi, who's in the audience, who's the principal of the Beal Early Childhood Center, which will become the Beal Elementary School, as well as Meg Belcito, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. They're being honored because of their outstanding work on the Beal project, creating an educational plan that was cited by the state Massachusetts School Building Authority as one of the best, if not the best, they had seen over the years they've been doing this work. And we're excited to see the report you'll see in a moment from the architect and project manager about the way that school plan is evolving. And so it's exciting to honor those outstanding leaders this coming Saturday, as well as all of the educators and support staff being honored with John Collins Awards. And that is Superintendent's report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Sawyer. The next item on our agenda is a time-scheduled appointment. It is the update on the Beal School building project. It's a report from the architect. We are going to hear tonight from Ms. Catherine Crockett, who is the president of Lamoureux Pagano Associates, and Mr. Paul Queenie, who's the owner's project manager from PMA Associates. They will provide an update to the committee on the status of the Beal building project. So welcome, Ms. Crockett and Mr. Queenie.
Thank you. This is the first time that we've met since your successful vote in town, and so we collectively congratulate you. Phenomenal job, really wonderful for us on the team to see such strong support for the project in so many respects, and we know many of you are responsible for that. Subsequent to that, we've dived right into what's called design development, the very detailed phases of the project. So tonight gives us an opportunity to give you an overview of what you can expect as we complete the project and what we've been up to in the past couple of months. This may look familiar to you. Some major things have happened in that we've grown our project team. You know, we're working with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, particularly for funding and for guidelines. The School Building Committee has been meeting regularly and a terrific guiding force. Of course, we have PMA Consultants as the owner project manager, and our firm is represented as the architect. We now have Fontaine Brothers as part of our team. So they were selected through the construction management at risk process, very similar to what happened for both Sherwood and the library. And they've already been working with us We had a meeting in this room yesterday with all the department heads, for example, which was phenomenal. Paul and I were just discussing how effective that was, and we were able to have Fontaine there. So we're already getting input on constructibility issues, schedule issues from them. So it's been terrific. So, we're already seeing the benefits of that. Oops. Quick update on where we are. This is the MSBA sort of process line that we've been showing throughout the project. We have progressed already through Module 3 and 4, which were feasibility study and schematic design. 5, which is funding the project. So we're on the home stretch. That's how we view it. We are into that detailed design phase, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. Generally, what we're looking at is all of these different phases. So we are making a submittal at each of these junctures. There's design development, 60% construction documents, 90% construction documents, and 100% construction documents. Additionally, we've teamed up with Fontaine because they are advising us that some early bid packages, as they're called, will be beneficial. So when we complete the 60% construction documents, which is towards the end of May, we will be issuing 100% site documents. This will enable Fontaine to begin the site work this summer. So we will have shovels to the ground even earlier than we probably would have with a design bid build delivery method. And this will give them optimum time for the site work, particularly the Lake Street realignment, demolishing the existing buildings, getting the grading ready. And the goal is to be able to put foundations in this fall and be able to get the base of the building together so that the construction can progress in a very efficient way, which will be beneficial certainly in terms of meeting our goal, which is to occupy the building in August of 2021 and be able to have it, we anticipate, well fit up with the furniture, furnishings, and equipment, technology, commissioning, all of the things that are a part of a major project like that. So woven into this is another subset of early bid packages that will accelerate this project. We're excited about that. Our firm has done this a few times, even directly with Fontaine successfully. So we're very comfortable with this. We have very good communications in place, and we feel that we'll be able to do this well and to the benefit of the town. What we did include in here, there is actually one typographical error, but we wanted to reassure you that we will be meeting regularly with the building committee throughout these phases, so updates will happen. And we have already included junctures to meet with you again. So we have on the schedule March 13th, and this will be to give you an update on design development when we will have another estimate. And the estimates at these phases are from the construction manager at risk as well as our own independent estimator as the architect. So we still have 2 estimators that are on the project, but we are getting, again, the benefit of the contractor as a part of that process. Then the next one is the typographical error. We will have an update for you on June 5th, which will be that 60% construction document phase. At that point, we will have the 100% site documents out. And then we'll tentatively, we have scheduled meeting with you possibly right after Labor Day on September 4th, which would be very close to when we submit to MSBA for the final bid set. So needless to say, there's plenty to do. There's a lot of work in hand. Wanted to give you a quick review of, since it's been a while since we met, this was the aerial rendering that we had provided for schematic design. And this, I believe, was an animation that was used to help people understand the project as the funding authorization process was going forward. So it's coming down the hill from the Lake Street, this is going around the school, past the academic wings, the media center is in the back, kindergarten wing off of the front, and that main entry, which is continually, all of these are continually under refinement. That's essentially what these phases are about in terms of materials, methods. We've been meeting with the school representatives quite a bit, as well as the town department heads, as I said, and getting input, checking that we are going in the right direction, continually looking at how we refine the project. And this is an updated rendering. We're still looking at metal panels, as you can see over towards the left, which is the kitchen and cafeteria area, the school name, the canopies, kind of coming out as wings towards the main entry, which is that lobby that I will show you more about at main administration to the left. And this is an updated floor plan, which you may look at it and say it doesn't look any different than what we saw. And in essence, it is a lot of refinements, multiple layers of refinements. But in general, the organization of the building has held very well as we've gone through our meetings. So we still have the entry at the upper level with the vestibule that goes directly into the main administration area, similar to Sherwood. Once school is in session so that people are checked in before they go into the school. The cafeteria with these beautiful views out towards the south soccer fields, the stage directly accessing off of that with the music rooms, the gym, which feeds out at grade to a new multi-purpose field, and then the kindergarten wing, which goes to a play area, one fence play area, and then this is the two-story academic wing with the recess area in this location where we have a second play area. And the media center has been a really interesting discussion, I believe, as we've been evolving the vision for this, which came forward in the educational philosophy statement for which the group is being awarded the Impact Award. One of the specific comments that MSBA made was about the articulation of the maker space, or the space that's going to support the STEAM curriculum in this school, that they found many other districts seem to stumble with what that was going to be. And so we've had some interesting conversations about how to articulate that architecturally. That's an example of what we've been doing. The lobby, as we've described it before, is going to enter at this second upper level, and this will be the view into the cafeteria. And then you'll go down the stairs and you'll have this view directly into the media center. So this is I started calling this a zipper. I have all these phrases, that knuckles and zippers, but this is the zipper that holds the building together. It gives us that strong organization that we hope will help people with orientation. These are strong community use spaces, and it's a very efficient layout as all of the academic wings fan out directly from that area. That was a big programmatic issue that everybody wanted in the school. They didn't want long length of travel to get to these core facilities, so they're all very centrally located. And this is the view, the opposite view of the lobby. So this is as though you're looking, if you're standing here and looking at the gym. So we'll have some display areas. We're very excited about getting some north light into the media center area as well as the lobby. And this is that administration area. Right here is a direct door into it from the vestibule, and then that's the door out to the lobby. And you can see this canopy. And we're excited about this drawing in the community members as well as the young students that will be going to the school at a scale that's appropriate for them, and then having this expansive lobby with all of these exciting features off of them. And that is our report.
Excellent. I don't know, Mr. Queenie, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
No, we just, everything's going according to plan, and MSBA is satisfied with the work to date, and we expect the next deliverable to them to be on target and have this be received the same way.
Great, excellent. Well, thank you for the presentation. Colleagues, questions and comments? Mrs. Fritz.
Just a comment, I think, adding the Fontaine brothers to the mix is, we all know each other, we all know each other's work. It just makes it comfortable, and that things are going to be done right and on time, because it's a tight timeline. It's not like Sherwood where we had, we were gonna move there when it was completed, where we don't have another place. So I think having all of the experts, like you two, working on with Fontaine brothers is keeping us on track to get us in on that August date. So, thank you.
Colleagues, anything further? I just want to thank you both for the work that you've done on this project and your teams. This is an incredible project that's come a long way, and as Mrs. Fritz noted, a relatively short amount of time. I do have a question. I notice the public use facilities, so including the cafeteria, the gym area, are very conveniently towards the front of the building. Is it going to be set up so that those can be closed off from the rest of the academic space? Because I know obviously we sometimes have outside entities coming in to use those spaces that don't necessarily need access to the rest of the building.
Great question, and definitely has been a part of our discussions in design development and even with the building inspector in terms of how we can do that safely. So we do have doors that will close off the academic wings on both levels. And this project is very interesting because the vision is for it to be fully used in the summer and extensively used after school hours. So we'll be working for example, you'd have the opportunity, if you wanted to keep one wing open after hours, you would be able to do that the way it's organized. Or you could keep the whole school open, or just focus, community basketball, for example, just allow this to be open. We have the public toilet rooms directly across the hall, and everything else can be locked off.
Okay.
So that is a very important design consideration.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Balich, if I
Mr.
could
Collins,
just
go ahead.
ask the team just to elaborate a little bit more on kind of the near-term summer and fall upcoming discussions with other boards relative to Lake Street realignment, because I think that those will be happening relatively soon. And I know there's still a lot in the mix in terms of planning and details, but just kind of what discussions might be happening in the next couple of weeks or months.
I'm going to go back to this slide to help illustrate this a little bit, although it's a little outdated now. The current Lake Street, if you remember, kind of doglegs around this way. It's also a very hilly
Steep incline.
street. We heard a lot in public hearings about concerns about traffic on that. So a big part of our project is to not only realign it, but to literally, we call it cut. We're gonna lower the grade of Lake Street. So it's a fairly major project. It will really improve traffic flow along here, and most importantly, from our perspective, is the sight line. So as people are coming out of this, either one of these exits or buses and so on, they'll have a much longer view. So it is an important part. One of the debates that we've had at this time is about whether it will be fully accessible to the public or not, and that is something that is under discussion and has different schedule and budget implications. Our site plan review, which is all predicated on this 100% site document schedule that we have, is going to be filed on February 13th. And included in that, for site plan, we need to include what the strategy is for this, the strategy for all site lighting, snow storage. Many of the things that we did here during the hearings will be addressed at that time. So we have been working with multiple departments in the town. Public safety, fire, police, certainly, engineering, planning, the school department in terms of the impact of construction of Lake Street, because it will be at least a few months, and it could be longer, much longer, depending on what method is used. So that is a big part of what we've been debating at this point. Is that adequate?
That's very good, thank you.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Sawyer, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'll ask Ms. Clotter if she'd like to add something first, and then
I just want to say before you go, not only do I appreciate the skill that you bring to the design and the design development, but also the exacting attention to detail and your responsiveness. As we've met with different groups, to count like literally the number of volumes that will be in the library and the relative number of picture books versus other things, as well as refining some of the spaces to make it really workable. And it's just been a pleasure, so thanks.
Thank you. It's, as I've said multiple times, it's our privilege to work in this community and with the school department. Paul and I were just discussing that beforehand. You do have a marvelous community here, and it is our pleasure to work with you. But specifically, I very much appreciate that comment. I think that's something that we try to do as a firm on a regular basis that we hope proves out for, especially a 50-year school. You want to be sure you're getting it right, and we really we've been enjoying working on the media center in particular, and there is a lot to it. It's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But thank you.
I would say as kind of an outsider engineer, not an educator or an architect, but you can clearly see through this how the building has been designed around the program within it, so it's tailored to the program, whereas maybe the older system of, you would have these buildings with long corridors and classrooms on each side, and they would find a way to educate. This here is all arranged around the program itself, and that's, you know, it's gonna be a very effective way and make it a good school experience.
All the light is such a nice contrast to the current Beale School basement. Thank you both again for coming tonight. We really appreciate not only your presentation, but also all of your hard work.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back in a few months.
Excellent, thank you.
thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a time-scheduled appointment with the superintendent. It is the superintendent's annual State of the District report. Dr. Sawyer will share his perspectives regarding the current state of Shrewsbury Public Schools with the committee and the public. Committee members received a copy of this report earlier today under a separate cover. Dr. Sawyer will now walk us through his views on the state of the district. Dr. Sawyer.
Thank you. Let me just get my
No problem.
slides here. All right. So since 2013, I've been making these presentations, typically in January, and I'm pleased to do so again this evening. The first piece, certainly, that I'd want to convey to the community and to you is that we have much to celebrate. There are lots of strengths that we have as a school district. We're doing excellent things for kids every day in our schools. I think we're adding a lot of value to the quality of life in this community. It remains my privilege and honor to be the superintendent here of a team of educators and support staff that is absolutely the best in the Commonwealth as far as I'm concerned. We have much to celebrate, but we also have work to do in order to achieve the collective aspirations that we have for our students that have been laid out in the past year, and I'll speak to that in a moment. But first, celebrating. Our students certainly continue to demonstrate very high levels of success, whether that's on traditional measures of academic quality, typically, of course, things such as national and state assessments, the new accountability measures. One recent piece of news is that our district was named for the third time to the College Board's National AP Honor Roll. What I particularly like about that accolade is that that's not only about excellent performance, but it's about increasing access to rigorous coursework for our high school students. And all the indicators of that, our students are receiving an excellent education when it comes to academics. But beyond that, as we know, certainly education is beyond simply test scores and academic results. What our students create, how they perform when it comes to visual arts, when it comes to the performing arts. When we talk about our different competition teams, one of the best speech and debate teams, and certainly in the state, if not the nation. A robotics team that continues to win awards for their innovation and for the way that they present, winning the prestigious Chairman Award multiple times for representing the very best of what that program is about. Our mathematics teams, Model United Nations, you name it, Geography B, students are doing well and finding opportunities to pursue their passions in ways that are beyond the regular classroom as far as their academic interests. And our athletic program, as you heard from a report earlier this year, continues to do extremely well, not only in terms of results, but in developing the kinds of skills and leadership qualities among our students that you get from any of these kinds of programs. So these are things that we continue to be proud of. In terms of who's doing the work, our educators, our support staff, our leadership team are of the highest quality. They do what I would consider to be extraordinary work every day. And I'm reminded when we have visitors and we have folks who are coming to see our schools for the first time, new families who continuously the comments are that they are just absolutely blown away by the quality of what people bring to the work, not only in terms of their skill set, but by their commitment. It's a very, very highly motivated group of people who are doing the work in our schools. I also wanted to point out the work that you do as a school committee. I mean, in terms of these are, as we try to remind people, non-paid voluntary roles, albeit elected, key leadership positions in our community. Your participation in developing and your support of the vision and the strategic priorities that we created last year, that we're charged with implementing over the last 5 years, the support that you generated in the community for the Beale School project, which we just, I mean, it's wonderful. This is coming to fruition and will be a reality before we know it. These things are really critical, and communities with good schools, well, it's hard to have the kinds of schools that a community wants if the school committee is not doing its job as far as leadership and stewardship, and I think you do an excellent job of that. Additionally, our parent community. We have very high levels of support from our students' parents and caretakers. We have lots of volunteers in the classroom. We have people who are raising money, creating opportunities, because our PTOs provide all kinds of enrichment for our students and as well as social opportunities. The booster organizations that are connected to particular groups, whether that's the SSMA with our performing arts program or the athletic boosters, parents connected with particular programs. Without their support, their fundraising, we couldn't provide the kinds of things that we are doing for our students on a regular basis. They're also, of course, doing the job at home to reinforce what we're teaching at school and making sure our students are available for learning and making sure that it's a true partnership between the family and the school. And then overall, the community support that we receive, the very high level of support for the Beale vote was one manifestation of that. But the community at large, who either may have been parents in the past or maybe never were parents in Shrewsbury, but see the quality of what our schools bring to the community. But also, I want to point out the continued excellent relationship we have with the municipal side of government and the leadership and the administration. It's been a pleasure, just as it was to work with Dan Morgado preceding him. It's been a pleasure to work with Kevin Mizikar, our now relatively new town manager. The changes that have been made in terms of the approach or some of the structures on the municipal side are already, we're seeing some really good things, from Angela Snell now being in charge of the division, in charge of public buildings and grounds, along with her team. The responsiveness and the communication has been excellent so far. Just the prep and the work with this most recent snowstorm is a good example of that. There were districts around the state that had to delay school yesterday because they weren't quite ready for students. That was not the case here because of the outstanding work that our public buildings and custodians, workers did to make sure we were ready. And so that continues to be a strong sense of support. So for all these reasons, again, we have evidence of continued excellence, and these are strengths that we can certainly build on as we seek to meet the goals that have been laid out for us. The visual there of a portrait of a Shrewsbury graduate with the different icons for the areas that we're focused on. I do want to call people's attention once again that we are not just about providing kids with an education that enables them to have academic content and skills. Those are important, as in, the first icon there of critical thinking and content mastery, certainly the core of what we do. But we are trying to teach a broader set of skills than that, and we want our kids to develop characteristics and dispositions that go beyond simply academic learning. I think it's a very powerful vision. It's one that's going to take time to achieve. There are lots of things that we're doing very well already, but there's no question that we have work to do because the world our students will be graduating into continues to evolve, continues to have a variety of different kinds of pressures, and we have to make sure our students are flexible thinkers and resilient and able to have the kinds of so-called soft skills to be able to succeed regardless of the area they might go into for a profession, or more importantly, to be good citizens who can contribute to society in a positive way. To go with those, you approved and charged us with executing around these 4 strategic priorities over the next 5 years. We're starting last year into 2022. These 4 areas will move us towards that vision in the portrait of a Shrewsbury graduate, but these are the areas where we need to focus our time and attention. This is really the work that we need to be doing because if we're not in a position where we're putting the energy and our time and attention and resources into the right things, we're not going to have the leverage to really move and the needle towards achieving those goals. So I'll take some time to talk about the work, what I see happening under each of these where we do need, where we do have work to do. First off, and these are in no particular order of importance, learning environments where everyone's success matters. And my belief is that we have work to do if we are going to become a district. When we say all means all, that's really what we mean, and that's really what we're doing. It's not about some fraction of students, however large a fraction, being successful. It's about all of our students being successful and students getting what they need to be successful. And whether those are students who are absolutely flying high and need more challenge, whether those are students who have the most difficult of challenges when it comes to their own disabilities, or whether it's all the students who are in between on a spectrum that varies substantially. We want to make sure we're personalizing learning and making and enabling our students to get what they need from the education they receive from us. A lot of this, of course, has to do with building on inclusive practices. The co-teaching work that has been happening and will continue to grow over the next few years has been very gratifying. We're seeing some really excellent early results, but it's also very challenging. The work that has to happen in terms of high levels of collaboration between a regular education classroom teacher professional and a special education professional, the dedication to really providing the right kind of specialized instruction at the right time for different students and meeting their needs. It is really orchestrating a lot of things in a very complex way, but it's worth it because we know the results are strong when it's done well. It's also making sure we have the right kind of mindset. The term growth mindset has become somewhat of a cliche maybe these days, but the concept behind it is very powerful. We really want to focus on what our students are capable of accomplishing and making sure we're providing the right kinds of supports and the right kinds of things to help them get there and really maximize their potential to the greatest extent possible, as opposed to looking at students from more of a deficit model, which is really one of the criticisms, I think, of some of the education reform era that I think is sort of coming to a close now, is that focusing on what kids aren't doing well as opposed to what they do well and how we can build on those strengths. And we know that beliefs are very powerful when it comes to educators who have beliefs that students can and find ways to help them get there. Students can accomplish incredible things, which they never would if people didn't have that belief system to start with. So it's something we have to continue to focus on. We also need to look at the diversity of our community. Our learning environments have to be accepting of all of our students and our families, and we're becoming a much more diverse community every year. And we know we have work to do in terms of learning how to be culturally proficient in ways that may not be as familiar to us, to make sure that our staff increase their knowledge and their skill of working with students and families whose cultures of origin are different from theirs, and making sure all of our students feel welcome and unconditionally accepted. That's what community is about, and that's what we know leads to better educational outcomes for students when we have those kinds of environments for kids. So that inclusivity really is critical. And we'll be working to develop different tools and looking at different data to determine, how is it we can make sure that all of our students, regardless of what subgroup, whether that's our students who are socioeconomically in a situation that's more challenging, whether those are students who come from different cultural backgrounds or language backgrounds, whether those are students whose race and ethnicity is different. We want to make sure we're seeing where those gaps are and making sure we're doing things to accelerate their learning and their success so we can close those gaps to the greatest extent possible. So really making sure that everyone's success is what's on the table, and we're paying attention to that is important. The next priority in terms of the enhanced well-being of all, I really believe that we have work to do if we're going to become a district where we can truly say that, as the saying goes, the kids are all right, as well as our educators. And because we have some significant issues in society that we're not immune to in Shrewsbury. We know that when it comes to stress, when it comes to social and emotional and behavioral health issues, we have challenges, just like every other school district in the Commonwealth and the country. There are things that are evolving that are things that have been the same as long as we've had children and adolescents, but there are challenges that are emerging that are somewhat different. The legalization of marijuana, the epidemic of vaping, which is very new to society, and how the impact that's having on students. When we look at the issue of the opioid crisis and the impact that continues to have, we have to look at the data that we've received from our students talking about higher rates than certainly we would like to see in terms of students reporting being depressed, in terms of students reporting having suicidal ideation. That was a very sobering report we received earlier in the fall. And it's something we have to pay attention to make sure we're providing the right kinds of education and the right kinds of supports for students and families to minimize the potential impact of these kinds of things. We know that we have to look at that by subgroup as well. We know that the data show that LGBTQ students are particularly at risk in a lot of these areas, and that's something that we need to continue to pay attention to and make sure we're providing the right kinds of supports. Whether those are counseling supports, clinical supports, we have to look at what we have that's working and where we need to expand and provide more so that our students have the kinds of interventions when they're necessary and general education around these kinds of things as well. That, of course, includes the focus on social and emotional learning. I'm looking forward to, I've been able to read the executive summary, but the Aspen Institute just came out with a very major report in the last couple of weeks relative to the importance of social and emotional learning and its connection to academic success and school success. They're really, this is something that's been a burgeoning issue across districts across the nation, and it's an area where we need to continue to pay attention, and I think the work that we've started to do is very promising, but we need to stick with it and make sure that we create a comprehensive approach, that this isn't something that happens in pockets depending on someone's skill set, but that our students are really guaranteed to have a strong social and emotional educational experience from pre-K all the way through high school, and that our staff across the board are able to provide that, and that's something that will be very important. We also need to be considering our educators. In the memo I've sent you, I referenced the national environment around public education, what's been happening with teachers in a variety of states. And coming out of an era where I think the perception, and for good reason, is that there were a lot of blame put on educators and teachers in particular for issues that go beyond what schools have the capacity to do. Unfortunately, in many places across the nation, after the economic downturn and recession, in terms of real wages and compensation, things never caught up after some deep cuts, and even as far as what schools could provide. We're very fortunate to be here in Massachusetts, where the state has continued to invest heavily, and although we certainly have our issues and our needs compared to some other places around the country, we are much better off. But whether it's the news that's happened over the past year and West Virginia or Oklahoma, Arizona, now most recently Los Angeles. Things have hit a tipping point. And I'm pleased to see that there seems to be more of a recognition of the value of the work that educators do, and the importance that if we really want this to work, that educators have to be valued and respected as a profession. And that's something that I think locally we have a lot of strength with. But it's at the same time, there is data out there that says even in well-funded states and well-funded districts that have more capacity, teachers are still very highly stressed. And it's not an exception in Shrewsbury. The level of expectations, the number of initiatives, the complexity of the work, all of that combined is creating situations where teachers are demonstrating that there's a lot of stress that's going with the work. We need to figure out ways to mitigate that. We need to make sure we're paying attention to our employees' well-being, and that is something that we'll need to continue to address in the coming years. The third area is connected learning for a complex world. If we're going to say that all of our students are participating in the kinds of learning experiences, where they're developing the kinds of skills to become the citizens we want them to be, we need to continue to work at making sure that the innovative approaches that have taken root in many places become more systematic. It doesn't mean every learning experience every day is going to be a project-based learning experience. It doesn't mean that every single thing is going to be somehow connected to the so-called 4 C's of critical thinking and creativity, collaboration, and creativity. But they have to be in place across the board in enough places that students are really developing these, not just in bits and pieces, but again, in a very thoughtful, systematic way across their experiences. I think there's a lot of promising things that are happening, but we just need to make sure we cement them into place and make sure we know where those experiences are going to happen for students so we don't have gaps. And that's, I think, exciting work you're going to see lots of evidence of in the coming years, and we'll look forward to reporting on that. But as I referenced earlier, what we're seeing in society today, in the media today, we know that our students have to be able to be savvy consumers of news and information, understand when they see statistics or they are being given a certain message around a certain issue, that they're able to separate out the fact from fiction, that they're able to make determinations based on the values and character that they've developed, and we need to help them do that in partnership with families. We want them to be informed citizens, empathetic citizens, who are serving the community. And that community service element, which is a real strength of ours, needs to continue to be a focus in order to make sure the students gain those kinds of pieces, because we could certainly have well-educated graduates who ultimately aren't able to be effective citizens if they don't have these other skills. So we need to keep paying attention to that. And then, I think a lot of this work, of course, is by empowering our educators to be innovative. You've seen some examples of that, most recently Mr. Mullarella and the design lab at Oak, which all of our 7th and 8th grade students will experience at different times during their career at Oak Middle School. That's just one shining example. But some of the best things that happen in our classrooms are not because of some edict that came from on high. It's really because we've created the conditions and we have curious and motivated teachers who are able to access learning and figure out ways to apply things to their day-to-day classroom teaching to make things work better for kids. We need to be able to continue to create those kinds of conditions and not make the mistake of being so prescriptive as a school district that we lose that ability for teachers to innovate and be empowered to do so. The fourth and final area is space and resources to support effective learning. And we certainly still have work to do if we're going to be able to say that we have these things, that we can achieve our goals that the community expects of us. The report you saw earlier about Beal, of course, is a great example of a major improvement that's going to happen in this area, to have sufficient space at the elementary level to relieve overcrowding, and obviously to get out of a building that's becoming obsolete. That was a critically important decision for our community to make, and it's one that's going to pay dividends for decades to come. However, we still have pressure points. We have highest enrollment ever at the high school. It's going to continue for the next few years. We're still bursting at the seams at the two middle schools. So we're going to be able to stay pretty stable there, we believe, but it's still a lot of kids to serve, and spaces are limited. But not only space, of course, we have personnel issues in terms of what we can bring to the program. Being able to have staff that's not shared between the middle and the high school level would enable the high school to do some innovative things with its schedule that it can't currently do. That's something we're hoping over the next couple of years we can evolve. We need to be thinking about how is it that we provide the kinds of supports for social and emotional and behavioral health needs and so forth, because we can set ambitious goals, but if we don't have the capacity to reach them, it's going to be a lot of spinning our wheels, and that's not something I think anyone wants to see us doing. In particular, I would say that in addition to enrollment increases that we need to address, making sure we have sufficient staffing to do the kind of inclusive work. We've done some excellent work building in-district programs that enable our special education program to educate students within our neighborhood schools. And then we need to continue to focus on that. Clinical and counseling resources, things that promote that family engagement and culturally proficient practices, the social emotional learning piece, the staff well-being, and then the kind of partnerships we need to build with community, whether that's businesses, whether that's higher education, engaging alumni, career awareness. These are things that we have great aspirations for, but currently are on the light side in terms of our ability to have time and resources to make it happen. And then the committee is aware we're doing we're working with the UMass Collins Center on a study of our operational capacity. We'll have a report in probably a month or so for the committee to consider. But day-to-day operations for things such as student registration, business operations, state reporting, we are very, very stretched when it comes to these pieces. And there are leaders who end up doing more minutia because we don't have the right kind of capacity, who could be leveraging their talents to move some of these bigger issues forward if we can make sure we have the right kind of capacity for our day-to-day operations. And without that additional capacity, I just worry that we're going to be compromised when it comes to achieving what I think is a very important and worthy set of goals. So with that, in conclusion, I'll refer to the hashtag you see on the screen that we've been using on Twitter to share what's happening. And as I put in the report, I appreciate the verb tense of this particular term because I think it signals that it's not only something that we have done and will continue to do, but that we're doing constantly. We have to be a learning organization. Obviously, we want our students to learn, but we as staff and leaders and as an organization have to continue to learn. And we're not going to achieve what we want to achieve unless we can do that. We have ambitious goals that we've set out, but I'm confident that if we have the capacity and if we continue to focus our energy and our resources in the right places, that we will meet the set of ambitious goals and make this vision a reality for the children whom we serve. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that the committee has about the report, and overall, it's a good news story.
Thank you, Dr. Sawyer. Colleagues, questions and comments? Mrs. Fritz.
Comment, as I was driving home from work today, it was a local Boston sports radio talking about the Patriots and how does that organization do what they do year after year, and they all had their opinions, and they talked about, they finally agreed on, it's built from the ground up. And I think that is what we look at in our public schools. It's ground up, it's not top-down management, it's very collaborative, and we have teaching staff. We have the people to do the work. We need to provide those resources so that they can do. And that's, looking at strategic priorities is how we get to that point. So we have the right organization, but even with unlimited funds, if you don't have the right organization, you're still not going to reach your goal. So I think we've got everything. We look for, high expectations in education, and we're innovative. And you talked about creating situations. That's because it's a collaborative district. I think you've built an organization to do all those things, but we have to keep improving, and there's obstacles, and things kind of have to shift as time goes by. But I think that's a testament to your work and the work of everybody in this district. It's ground up collaborative, and that's why we're successful, but we gotta always keep working at it. So thank you. It is a good report. It's good news, but like you said, there's strategic priorities we're to keep building on.
Thank you. Mrs. Canzano.
Excuse me, one of the things that I was struck by, excuse me, is how at the beginning you talked about the portrait of the graduate and the expectation that we have that we're going to raise flexible learners. And yet, I found this report to show how the district is becoming flexible and adaptive to the needs of these students. One of the things over the years I've heard about personalized learning and the cultural proficiency, SEL, and project-based learning. But now they're are like our primary focus. They've been part of our conversation, but now they're more mainstream, I guess, because they're making really important differences in lives of children. So I was really glad to see that focus, recognizing that we have capacity issues, and we always have to keep our eye on that. And the only thing I would encourage the community to do is to be on Twitter and follow your Shrewsbury Learns, that hashtag, because I know today I was watching Pam Poitras put one out there. I think it was about weather forecasting and the fact that there hasn't been a snow day yet, and that's kind of a big deal to some students out there. But there's really wonderful things to be learning on that hashtag on Twitter, and it just highlights just how magnificent our educators and staff are. So thank you for the report. It was really good.
Thank you. Mr. Wensky.
Yeah, this is a great report. I agree, we have a lot to celebrate. And to Sandy's point, I think it comes to, the entire town. It's a team effort, right? And the sustained success that we've certainly had as a result of that, not just leadership, but also the educators, the students, and the community. We've had some great success over the years, but as you mentioned, there's so much more to do. And I think what I was struck by was just the educators and their task, even their day-to-day, and navigating our students through the complexities of today's world. It's much different. Technology is both a positive and a negative, right? It's kind of a double-edged sword. There's so much innovation that they are learning through the technology that they use in the classroom. And then there's, the negative side of technology, not just iPads, but, you mentioned even just the health of students that we have to consider. And those are things that educators are presented with in the day-to-day. When it comes, you mentioned vaping, technology. Again, it's something we might not have had a conversation about 10 years ago, but here we are. So I'm very struck by that, kind of the mix of references to technology and making sure that our students are savvy consumers of information. I think now more than ever, right? And I've seen that just in my own kids learning in the schools, whether in middle school and high school, and what's happening in each of the grades and how they're exposed to, navigating through social media and becoming responsible digital citizens. Again, another term that you wouldn't hear 10 years ago. So I think it's amazing work that we're seeing in the schools. I do follow Shrewsbury Learns as well. So I see it every day, but I never lose sight of the complexity that our educators are experiencing day to day as our environment evolves around technology. So, great report. Thank you.
Mr. Wensky. Colleagues, anything further? I will just close by saying that I agree that this is a very good news story. I think that we have a lot to be proud of as a district, despite all of the challenges that face us, that whether they be challenges that are facing all K-12 districts or whether they be challenges that are unique to Shrewsbury. I think we still continue to perform exceedingly well, as evidenced by a number of the specifics you pointed out. I like very much that this district remains focused on our strategic 5-year priorities as well as our portrait of a graduate. Those are living, breathing documents that continuously inform the work that we do. I think when we adopted those as a committee, we all talked about how for those to be realized, we were going to have to stay focused on them, that we were going to have to remain committed. And I certainly see those reflected in each and every piece of each and every direction that our district has taken, and you can see a reflection of those, and I think that that's very much important. I also am impressed by the fact that despite limitations and challenges we may have, that we're always continuing to innovate. Obviously, what kids need to know and what kids need to be able to do is always changing, and for us to be successful as a district, we need to stay on top of that. We have never taken the approach that we're just gonna sit on our hands and try to maintain everything exactly as it is. Sometimes with more specific items, for resource reasons, we have to do that, but it's clear that we are always continuing to innovate. And I credit a lot of that, Dr. Sawyer, particularly to your leadership. I've had occasion to say many times before, and I'm kind of a broken record on this, I find myself saying this probably once every other month, but it seems to me that the reason we do as well as we do as a district is because of the quality of the staff that we have. We are never gonna have the most money, we're never gonna have the newest, nicest things. We do as well as we do because of the quality of our people, and that starts from the superintendent on down. Obviously, you set the tone for a culture that is serving our students very, very well. So I thank you for that. And if nothing further, I think that concludes superintendent's update, unless you had any further.
No, well, I will preview that at our
Will I
next
take a
meeting.
picture of this so I can actually tweet it out with
There
that
you go.
hashtag later?
We'll be presenting the superintendent's budget recommendation at our meeting, first meeting in February, I believe it's the 13th. And the approach that we will take to that is very much in line with this, where we will be providing information on what it would require to maintain the status quo that we have, but then also what kind of strategic investments we would recommend under each of these 4 strategic priorities, so that the community can see these are the places that we feel we need resources, and resources would be help us be successful in doing this important work. And you know, again, there is much to celebrate. And when I say there's work to do, I certainly, as I try to point out in the report, the culture in this district for as long as I've been here, and certainly preceded me for many years, people work very hard because they're very committed to the importance of what we do for children. It's a question of doing the right work and making sure that the work is as impactful as possible relative to really making a difference. And we do have some real challenges today in this environment and society. At the same time, there may be more opportunities than we've ever had to do that work well. So it's a very exciting time as well as a challenging time. And the way things evolve very rapidly is clearly a challenge, but it makes things very, very interesting as well. Ms. Fritz referenced the Patriots, which is on our mind these days, and I did see something recently that talked about from the time that the Patriots beat the Rams, and the first time they were in the Super Bowl with Tom Brady as quarterback back in February 2002. That was before any kind of social media. It would be certainly before Uber, certainly before lots of other stuff that we've talked about. The world, the amount of change that's happened in the world over what is obviously a very lengthy football career, but relatively in history a very short period of time, is astounding. And I was reflecting on it because that parallels very closely the lifespan of my oldest daughter, who was born in November of 2001. And to think she's a junior in high school, and a lot of the things are just what she's known, but there's been a lot of very significant change in many ways in society, and so that's something that I think we have responded to well in many cases, but it does create a lot of challenges at the same time. So with the support of the community, we'll continue to be able to, I think, do the work that our students need us to do. But thank you very much for the continued support, and we'll look forward to presenting our thoughts about budget when we come back in a few weeks.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sawyer. The next item on our agenda is under curriculum. It is the SHS Program of Studies for the coming academic year, 2019-2020 school year. This is the second time that this has come before us. The committee heard a presentation on the proposed changes to the Program of Studies at our previous regular meeting on January 9th. At that time, Mr. Bazillo, SHS principal, outlined proposed changes and provided the document for the committee's review. We have the complete program of studies enclosed in our packet, and Dr. Sawyer, am I correct? There's no changes from tonight's version from what was presented on January 9th?
No, what was presented is the only changes compared to the document from the past year.
Excellent. And the committee, to my knowledge, did not receive any direct feedback. Do committee members have any further comments or questions on this topic before we bring it to a vote? Seeing none, I would request a motion at this time that the school committee vote to approve the Shrewsbury High School 2019-2020 program of studies as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. And I need to scroll way past this to get to the next item on our agenda, because it is several hundred pages. Bear with me, everybody. And I'm all the way past it.
113.
Thank you, Ms. Clouder. 113. The next item on our agenda is under policy. This is the second reading of the enrollment of non-resident students policy. The first reading of a draft of a revision to policy 621, enrollment of non-resident pupils, was held at our previous school committee meeting, also on January 9th. The draft of the policy was posted for public viewing and comment. Additional changes have been made since the first presentation on January 9th based on feedback received from the committee at that time. Those are noted in the green font in our enclosed version. And we did not receive any additional feedback from the community. The policy subcommittee consists of Mrs. Canzano and myself. Mrs. Canzano will summarize the proposed changes that have been made since January 9th. Mrs. Canzano.
Yep, very good. Excuse my onset of laryngitis here. I'm a bullfrog. As you'll see in your packet, there were a few changes that took place with individual conversations that we had with Dr. Sawyer. You'll see that the date has been changed about informing the district about a pupil who becomes a non-resident during the school year from May 1st to April 15th. The second piece that has been changed is there's been some language added when we're talking about a pupil who becomes non-resident, due to extreme circumstances. So there were some examples in there that were more specific. Also, asking that when the superintendent makes a recommendation to us, that there's a detailed rationale given along with that. And the final addition is an agreement that would be in place with the parent or custodian about the continued attendance of the non-resident, having that seen as a privilege subject to this policy. It can be revoked. So there's a little more flexibility for us, perhaps.
Specificity.
There you go, that's probably the better word. So those were the four changes that occurred.
I will also note that Dr. McGee actually pointed out to me earlier a technical correction.
Yes.
There is, and I apologize, I didn't actually identify where, we do vacillate between the terms parent or guardian and family or guardian. Dr.
Okay.
McGee had suggested earlier that it would be best to keep that consistent. So I would ask that when we vote,
Sure.
when I'll call for a motion later this evening, I'll call as amended that the terminology parent or guardian be used consistently throughout.
Okay.
Anytime such a reference is made. Dr. Sawyer, did you have anything you wanted to add before I turn it to the committee for discussion?
Just that I did consult with the school committee's legal counsel regarding the language of the policy, and he made some suggestions that are included in the changes since the first reading. And he's confident that it puts us in a position where the school committee has the ability to take action under circumstances where it feels warranted, but it's really protects the committee against it being too expansive and subject to potential abuse. So the legal counsel is comfortable with the language, and as am I. As superintendent, I would recommend that you adopt this revision to the policy.
Excellent. So at this time, we'll open it up to committee members for questions and comments. Dr. McGee.
No big comments. I support the intent of this change. I think it's a good policy modification, and so I hope that it passes. I would say that from a process point of view, I like the idea that we expire these or put them up for review in 5 years, so there's always unintended consequences, and it gives you a chance to recover from those. I think the other piece that I would like to see just going forward is that when we make a policy change, that perhaps we review similar districts around us or the like to get a sense as to whether they've addressed the same problem in the past and how their policy looks compared to ours. Just to, again, to fill out my own appreciation of how we're doing this. But as it is, I think it's a good policy.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback, and it's certainly something for our policy subcommittee to keep in mind going forward. I know there are examples where, of course, that action is taken, but certainly something for us always to consider. Further questions or comments from committee members? Seeing none, at this time, I am going to ask for a motion that the school committee vote to approve the updated version of policy 621, enrollment of non-resident pupils, with the stipulation that the phrase parent or guardian will be used in place of families or guardian, or family or guardian, excuse me.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. The next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. We have before us the minutes from our regular business meeting on January 9th, 2019. They've been prepared by Ms. McCollum, our clerk, and reviewed by Mrs. Fritz as secretary. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, or objections related to those minutes? Seeing none, without objection, we will mark those minutes as being approved. We do need to go into executive session this evening. I would entertain a motion that the school committee enter into executive session for the purpose of collective bargaining with cafeteria workers, for the purpose of collective bargaining with the Shrewsbury Education Association, and for the purpose of negotiations with non-represented school administrators, where deliberation in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, for the purpose of reviewing and acting on student residency issues, and for the purpose of reviewing, approving, and/or releasing executive session minutes, only to return to open session, or excuse me, and to return to open session only for the purpose of adjourning for the evening.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. This motion requiring a roll call vote. Dr. McGee?
Aye.
Mr. Wensky?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzano?
Aye.
Mr. Pawlich? Aye. Thank you.
Power 5.